good morning. (8:15 a.m.) Welcome to the Barrens chat. Typically a show that's going to focus the lower races, World of Warcraft, but I think there's some pretty important things we should cover first. Mostly the covenants. Pre-patch dropped yesterday, and we don't really know. Some of us don't know. We're living lives or whatever it is that we're doing about what's to come when Shadowlands drops. The biggest thing, in my opinion, aside from the number crunch, aside from the level squish, all that stuff, is instead of having two sides of the new storyline, we're gonna have four. It's gonna be, yes, I put three fingers up. We're gonna have four. It's the whole idea of being able to choose where we go for an actual faction is kind of new. It happened in BC with, if you guys remember, the Alder and the Scryers, but it didn't happen until max level. Like, it really didn't happen until you're at the end of Terakar Forest, once you were level 70. And it was more to do dailies, not really build with the faction. And these are so much more storyline immersed. They actually have a little bit of a history to them. It's all really fascinating. So I thought it would be a good idea to kind of both cut my teeth on something new to talk about, to see how I can adapt, per se, of thinking of things to say on the fly, with the research that I've done. And then there's a little bit at the end I want to talk about new players coming forward, as far as where we are since yesterday's pre-patch versus the experience of the player that's played either 2 years or 17 years. It's the entire experience is going to be new if you're brand new to the game. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see if there's a division between people who have played for a long time, who have a whole different experience, who have grown with characters from 2004 to now. I think the entire thing is just taking a huge shift. But it's also really exciting. But we'll get to that at the end. But yeah, I guess we'll get into the meat of it. The biggest thing that's coming is going to be the covenants, right? So finish BFA level 50, go to the new content, right? You're going to be greeted with a quest to choose one of 4 factions. This time they're calling them covenants. So exactly what would a covenant be? And throughout the crazy expanded universe that is Azeroth, all the continents, everything, they're still in the afterlife. The afterlife is the Shadowlands, essentially, but it's kind of 4 interconnected realms. Okay, and each one has a powerful group that kind of controls it, that being the Kyrian and the Necro Lords and the Night Fae and the Venthyr. Each one, they hold their own unique purpose, kind of their own focus, or like things that they're kind of responsible for, to do very crucial things that kind of smooths out the whole workings of said afterlife. Once they cross into the Shadowlands, say your dude finally dies, crosses over to the Shadowlands, and you're judged by the Arbiter, who kind of, if you have any Harry Potter reference, works almost like the Sorting Hat. He assigns the souls to the care of a certain covenant based on the life they lived in the physical realm. Each of the covenant's realms, they work out whatever was burning them in, right? So they hone what Blizzard is calling their anima, right? Your anima is kind of like your soul experience, if you will. That way you find a rank to fit into for what would essentially be all of eternity. Some of them, some of the souls are so grotesque, are so unsavable, that they are sent to the Maw. If anybody saw the Bastion, cinematic, that's where Uther threw Arthas. He threw him into the Maw because he just figured he was such a horrid, unsavable, unredeemable soul. There's no other saving him, just toss him in. The Maw is more or less a prison because they're incapable of redemption. You know what I'm saying? So Blizzard's kind of built up for the past couple expansions that the entire universe falls on our own characters' individual presence, right? So being a powerful hero that we are, when we step into said afterlife, we kind of have a foot in the land of the living and the land of the dead because we've been sent there. We're not true dead, but we're still living, we're walking amongst said afterlife. We'll have a choice of what covenant kind of works with our own personal choices. So that being said, it's not a late decision because it's something that takes a really profound effect on the entire experience for yourself in Shadowlands. Because first you have to prove your worth to the covenant that you choose. You have to pick covenant specific, like leader figureheads, almost like a denizen. You play out the entire campaign and the story specific to that exact covenant. In Azeroth, you played, in Battle for Azeroth, should I say, you played on the storyline amongst, whatever campaign was according to your faction. So if you're Horde, you saw the Horde campaign, that was it. Typical cookie cutter WoW, where you start at one part of the zone, you work your way to the end. This one, even though BFA kind of changed a little bit, where you could choose where you want to go, like Legion did. You didn't have to go to Stormheim every time. You didn't have to go to Dressfire every time. You kind of plotted your own little path. This time, we have 4. We got the Kyrian, the Necrolords, the Venthyr, and the Night Fae. So discovering said covenants at level 50, your character begins to, the whole thing starts up by you're escaping the Maw. You're escaping that hell referenced place, the place of the unredeemable. And when you enter your first, the character for the first time, you'll be required to follow the entire storyline. You'll start in Bastion, progress through MALDRAXXUS, then Ardenweald, and then finally end up in Revendreth. That way, at the end, you have to align one of them to progress further. So seeing that level 60 really starts to take off. It's a whole lot of endgame. The focus is kind of being taken away from hardcore endgame raiding or straight PvP. You don't have just 2 things to do anymore. There is going to be a ton of things to do with these covenants. That being said, when you have an alt, and let's be honest, we all have alts, all of us. Once you've completed the journey from 50th, progressing through the story, choosing your covenant, doing all the little things that kick your character, you'll have an option of choosing the covenant right at level 50. So you log into your next tune and you choose it right off the bat. You aren't necessarily required to go through the entire storyline, but you can choose to do so, but you can also jump right into a covenant from the beginning, start working on world quests, jump right into endgame progression. And if you decide to go back and do quests, you'll not be required to follow the zone order that you had to follow the first time. That to me is really interesting, because they kind of give you the whole, okay, you've done this, instead of clicking the chat bubble and saying, hey, I've heard this speech before, whatever. You kind of just jump right to the important part of building stuff for your covenant. It also gives you opportunities to return your anima that you earn. It almost works as like a currency. You can return that to your covenant, bringing back souls from the Maw to Torcost, or you having a covenant sanctum. You kind of upgrade it in level. Think of a much improved version of the garrison, something that's actually beneficial and doesn't necessarily seclude you. Garrison idea back in Warlords was a really cool idea, but where they failed is they turned this massively personable into game where we were all kind of interacting all the time, to kind of sit in your own little housing area and didn't really do much with other people. It kind of bummed things out for a lot of folks. I know a lot of people that quit during Warlords because the lack of social interaction or motivation because everything was self-contained. You had professions you couldn't have, you were working on, you had, in your own way to acquire mounts and armor, and there was enough dailies to keep you busy for months at a time. So I think the Covenants are going to bring something really exciting. You can leave a Covenant to join a new one, and joining the new one isn't the hard part. It's as if you change your mind and try to go back to a previous Covenant you were aligned with. That's going to be the hard part. That'll be the challenge. But we haven't gotten there yet to see exactly how tough it's going to be. But we'll see. Let's get into the Covenants a little bit, right? So let's go with let's see. Start with the Kyrian. They are the primary Covenant of the Zone Bastion, right? They're kind of the as I have here, the angelic soul guides. They're kind of tasked with shuttling souls between the living and dead planes. You know what I'm saying? They're very purpose driven. They kind of follow a certain order. Kyrian are different because when they become part of said Covenant, that service is for life. It's eternal. Like once you join that rank, you are there until the end of time. They're also big fans of good human qualities like righteousness, virtue, humility. Like those are all things that they try to exemplify. So people who seek out the Kyrian aren't yet ready to assume roles of eternal service and burden their souls through like meditation, reflection to gain like a newer understanding, if you will. One person that we've all seen in Kyrian is Uther. Uther Lightbringer, who was killed by Arthas while he was, I think, when did Uther die? I think Uther died when he was defending Arthas's dad, right? It was King Menethil, I believe he gave his life for. And then the king that he died to help was, murdered by that guy's son. It's a huge thing. So if you're into the very beautiful scapes that we've seen as far as scenery goes in WoW, or the very forthright, like this is something that I would see, and you don't have to necessarily class it by the faction or race or whatever you play. It's all about what you want your soul to reflect by working through this whole thing. You know what I mean? It gives me a very paladin feel, like they would be a natural fit, because if you think about it, paladins kind of show forth all of those things. The honorable way of life, the protection of the innocent, the healing aspect, all of it. It's kind of an interesting, see such an extreme. Like we've always heard reference to the light, and we've always heard reference of, to see a non-evil Valkyr, I think is pretty badass. The next one is, of course, the Necrolords. They're out in MALDRAXXUS. They're essentially the military of the Shadowlands. They protect from like the external forces. They kind of wage wars on the enemies of death out there. So they kind of have like this unstoppable, unrelenting way about them that can be absolutely ruthless, which is what I'm excited to see. I want to see how hard the zone can get once you're doing the end level tiers of content, being that you're an opposing force. Like how hard do they come at you? apparently they're going to be the toughest covenant to join as far as being, you know, what you have to go through. But Necrolords are also the mentality that it fits very military. It's survival of the fittest. Those who can't really surpass kind of deserve failure and rejection, according to their philosophy. A lot of people can interpret that MALDRAXXUS is like the place of evil, because you see like spikes and bones and these horrible abominations that are all grotesque looking, but it's not necessarily true as much as it is. They focus more on power and rules and structure and the right philosophy. I kind of referenced in my own brain to the true biblical definition of what an archangel is. Everyone thinks archangels are these, you know, these beautiful creatures with the gold armor and the pretty sword and the gold hair and the dashing jawline. Technically speaking, they are some of the ugliest things in creation. Because how are you supposed to scare away or intimidate what threatens unless you're more intimidating? So I think that's a really interesting aspect to bring to the game going forward. One person that is in Necrolords I didn't expect at all was Thrall's mother, Draka. She got taken out, I think, by Gul'dan. Like, just as essentially, she was killed by an assassin, but at the, you know, through the direction of Gul'dan. So it's really weird to see someone so powerful join that. But she is that. She's a badass. That's what Draka does. Not sure how I feel about the surrounding areas. Like, it feels a little, kind of feels like the place. It kind of feels like the shadow area of Terakar Forest, if you will. So I don't know. We'll see what they do aesthetically. All I know is all the buildings are grand. All the structures are impeccably awesome. Yeah, we'll have to see. Let's see what goes on from there. But I mean, I'm excited. Next, we got the good old-fashioned Night Fae. This is for the aesthetically beautiful people. These guys are out in Ardenwald, however you want to pronounce it. They're the tree huggers, man. They're the guardians of everything nature-based. They kind of protect, not to sound cliche, they protect the entire circle of life. They kind of shepherd cycle between life and death. They represent autumn and winter cycles in said wheel of life. The cycle of death and rebirth comes from all parts of nature. They kind of serve kind of like the Kyrian, where they like the nature souls, guiding them from their life in the realms of eventual resting finality, you know, to a place of rebirth. Think of them as essentially treating every soul as a seed. They think you have to work through all the things you did wrong to rest. That resting period kind of betters yourself, and then you're reborn. The Night Fae are kind of a mirror, per se, to the Emerald Dream. A lot of the realms are strongly tied to the Drust, which is the Kultiran sort of practices. Souls with strong ties to a natural world even come back through. Once they come through the rebirth, they kind of connect to everything because they come to such an understanding. The perfect example for this is the fact that Cenarian's there. Cenarian's chilling. He's part of the Night Fae. He was purified in the Emerald Nightmare after being corrupted So now that he's working through, he's kind of getting that back on track again, coming into what he was, the pure, purity dryad that we all know him to be, which I think is pretty awesome. I like that they put major lore characters that are almost forgotten. Being out for the game's been what, 16 years now? It's almost a nice change of pace to see these major lore characters come back with a real twist from what we initially saw them as. It's a nice refresher, which is why I think we see so many people coming back that haven't played in a long time, because it's really a genuinely new idea. We're gonna say, I saved my favorite one for the end, because that is, of course, the Venthyr. They are just what it says. They are the punishers of the unworthy. They're out in the middle of Revendreth, which is also the last zone that we go through. They're vampiric, but they kind of seek out souls that are more or less weighed down by their burdens. And it's not even just their burdens, they're burdens of their flaws. So if they have too much pride, or rapaciousness, or greed, or too much apathy, like the Venthyr kind of purge them of these burdens and allow them to kind of make up for it, to kind of atone for it. They might be sentenced. Think about the Venthyrs, through all that work, you might still be sent to the Maw if you're marked irredeemable. But for the spark of maybe having a redemption, they kind of prepare the souls for one of two fates. Either you figure your stuff out, you harness your strengths and become a punisher for the Venthyr, or you can lighten your soul and move to another covenant to further your inevitable eternal journey. That being said, I think it's an absolute perfect fit. The Kael'thas Sunstrider's down there. He was the Lord of the Blood Elves, but he died Magistress Terrace, as we all know, that farmed him ridiculously for his stupid white bird mount after falling from grace because he followed the Legion. Imagine being that sort of elite mentality still being succumbed to the Legion. That shows you how strong the influence is. It's kind of crazy. I hope soon that they kind of start dipping into a little bit more of not necessarily the day-to-day practice, but the overall what they've done. I hope they hatch into what each respective covenant has done for the past. You know what I mean? Like, where have we seen their influence but not really knew it was their influence in expansions past? But each of the four covenants, they have a separate campaign that kind of goes into the storyline of that exact covenant. But I want to see how much more they tell about their motivations or their objectives or some issues they might have. Being that powerful, that you must see the surrounding realms as either friend or foe. They obviously all work symbiotically, but to what purpose do they get judgmental? I can see the Venthyr assuming that they're the best of the best because they're the last chance for those that are irredeemable, therefore being those with the hardest challenge of the souls that they're presented with, or those souls that come to them. But at the same token, I think the MALDRAXXUS, or the Necrolords, are going to be the ones that are kind of the unsung heroes because they have that militant, the best of the best of the best kind of attitude. But then the Kyrian kind of just hamper you along the way. To say, it's okay, you're working through it, we're here for you, here's a hug, sort of thing. Personally, I will be joining Venthyr, because not only do they fit me aesthetically, but the zone is just so me. It's just, I love it. If I could have a perfect world, it would be the Necrolord mentality with the Venthyr aesthetic. And I think I'd be in like my overall happy place. So as you go through these campaigns, doing various tasks, collecting your anima to both have for yourself and send into the world, you know, back into your Covenant's hall, whatever you want to call it. Along the way, you'll be earning renown. Renown's the new currency, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about what renown is over here. What is renown, right? We've seen the word on the forums, we've seen the word in a few different places. So after you choose your covenant, you'll need to earn this thing we all know now as renown. It's kind of a metered, level-tiered measuring system that you kind of earn favor with your chosen covenant by earning renown. It's actually considered to be stored, I think it'll be on your currency tab, I believe. There's also separate currencies for each individual covenant, because I feel there's gonna be a lot of people that are kind of flipping around back and forth no matter how hard it is to join or rejoin, just to see it. It's not gonna be called a different thing. It's just literally gonna be listed as Renowned Venthyr, Renowned Necrolord, Renowned Kyrian, you know, that sort of thing. A lot of people are trying to compare it to Azerite power, but the thing is, what it doesn't do to Azerite power is renown is an open-ended grind. So it's based on your campaign, and I think there's 2 weekly quests. Azerite power kind of had no cap. Renown will have a cap, which a lot of people are kind of like, oh, well, if I can only progress so much and I can only do so much per week, what's going to stop me from just not logging in the rest of the week? That them putting the cap on it should show you that there's going to be enough to do to keep you interested. So you'll have deeper connection with soul binds. You'll have, which the soul binds are your abilities that come from said fact, from the covenant. If you raise your maximum potential on features within your sanctum, it kind of increases levels of items required from world quests. You unlock a variety of features, including rewards, quests, followers, cosmetics. I mean, you name it, there's probably a reward type from earning renown. So you always have something next to grind to. You can earn recipes. You can do like legendary rune forging, which I think is a really cool thing coming up, because you have there's a rune crafter in Torghast, right? If you acquire covenant specific items like pets, a title, a back attachment, everyone knows my personal favorite, all the transmog stuff, and a mount, you have to do it. And I'll just be honest, the mounts are awesome. The armor sets alone, I think, are phenomenal. But as you earn levels, the different rewards unlock gradually. Like there's a Renown UI that shows different levels and what the feature is unlocked next. Like everyone thinks, oh, you're just gonna jump in there, get your covenant, you're gonna go through a 2-3 quest chain, and then all of a sudden you're part of whatever covenant you decide. Not the case. And then, get your mount just because. You grind everything, and then you earn your mount. So when you see one out in the world, if somebody riding one of the mounts, that they paid their dues and responsibilities along their own storyline. To earn renown, you kind of had to complete the weekly objectives, and there's 2 quests in I believe it's in your sanctum every week. The first quest asks you to deposit a certain amount of anima into your little reserve or your reservoir, or whatever you want to call it, and the second one is when it sends you to the maw and recover souls that are from your covenant. So say you're Venthyr and you're on your second weekly quest, it ports you down to the maw, which is bad because you can't mount in the maw. It's running only. and you have to recover, other Venthyr souls, which I think is pretty cool. It's also integrating a catch-up system for alts who have switched covenants. So those characters will be able to earn additional renown through dungeons and raids and callings, kind of till they reach what the current maximum would be. Callings are when you join a covenant and you start your sanctum, you'll begin to receive covenant callings. It's kind of like specific world quests that call upon you to perform these awesome deeds for your covenant, right? Kind of like world quests, they're specific to the reward that comes with it and how long it's available. They're only picked up inside your sanctum, which is the crazy part. It's not in the world. So imagine a daily that gives you a world quest is essentially what it's going to be. I think there's a menu now where you can click and see all your callings as you have them. But if you already have it picked up, it won't be highlighted. It's just a handy way to check to see if callings are available or not. That way, while you're out doing them, you can check to see if you have them all done before returning to your sanctum, turn them in. The sanctums, I think, are some of the coolest parts because being so similar to garrisons in Draenor or class halls, if you think of class halls in Legion, they weren't so secluded as it was for a garrison. But the Covenant sanctums are meant to be like home base, right? It's only for the max level characters. It's basically what's going to be one of your Hearthstones. You can reactivate areas of your sanctum whose powers and like your abilities have kind of been lost due to all the crazy crap going on in Shadowlands and the loss of the anima by the Covenant. When you restore these areas, once you restore the areas to being fully functional, you'll kind of get rewards to increase all the chances within the zone to earn more renown. Being the base of operations kind of mindset, every 2 weeks you get your quest to build your renown, and you kind of have all your other little facets once you unlock it. You always have something to think of it as a house. You always have something to improve on, So once you hit that cap of renown, doesn't mean you're anywhere. You're done with your sanctum for the week and what you can put into it and what you can help others put into it. Because they have the teleportation network. There's the scouting map to help you do various tasks. You have the whole anima conductor. All little things on top of and while you're doing it, you're getting the rewards. So I think it's a pretty cool thing they're bringing because it's just so much more than the game has ever really been in the past. Yeah, it's similar in idea, but you can't have a completely new idea and have it so radical that people are lost all over again. We've gotten a little complacent in having Blizzard over the years hand us things. Like, if you think about it, go play Classic with no add-ons. We didn't have marks on the map of where to go. We didn't have little swirls on the map to tell you where the dungeons were in case you forgot. It was a hardcore grind. So, on the same token, if you flip it to the other side, you have people saying, well, we miss the harder content. We miss the grind content. We miss, having more to do. Well, okay, here's 4 times the amount of stuff to do. Happy now, sort of answer, and that's I'm really excited about that because everyone knows how daunting it can be to log on every day and say, okay, I'm gonna do this, and this, log out, jump on my alt, do the same friggin' 7 tasks, log out, same friggin' 7 tasks on another tune. That's kind of not there anymore. A signature, because you get your signature abilities that come with the Covenant. So that's always something to work on as far as having part of the rewards and benefits is when you get that signature ability, you get to see how it adapts to the various zones and the various situations that you come across. I hope it turns out as well as it felt in beta, because it was was pretty rad. Like, for example, with my warrior, mine replaces my execute, so I can use it not only before a certain drop in their health, but also below. So I can literally charge in execute off the rip, dress into my rotation, and then finish it with my execute. You know, I love it. I just can't wait. Every covenant has different abilities. There's dungeon bonuses. There's, they kind of give you buffs and benefits to the members in the party at the time for the covenant to enjoy the perks. That's kind of coming more as we go. Like, I'm trying to think of the one. I just had it. The Venthyr has, I think it's in Sanguine Depths, right? You can activate these anima cages, and it debuffs all enemies within 40 yards. After, I think it's 20 seconds it deactivates. It gives your entire party a stack of Sinfall. And it was a Sinfall boon to everybody dies within range. Brings in. I think I'm the most excited just to see these new huge areas, because every zone, like every expansion, everyone has a zone that is very commonly hated, right? Like, for example, in vanilla, Desolus was just the most drab, boring, flat, running, great distance intensive zone. Personally, I avoided it like the friggin' plague, as did most of the people I played with. Burning Crusade, it was probably, if I have to really think about it, it was probably Blade's Edge Mountains, because the first half of the quests are really cool when you're running through, killing ogres, fighting raptors, rescuing wolves and shit from ogres. And then you get to the top, and it's just pull after pull after pull of all the Legion guys, just trying to mercilessly destroy you, take 2 steps, die. So I want to see, from what I saw, every single zone is absolutely beautiful. They might be a little bit more twisted or dark in ominence, but they're still beautiful. Like, even in Revendreth, like where the Venthyr are, it's a very almost Victorian Gothic era feel to it. But the hills are brown, there's lots of blood, there's a lot, it's a very, very tough place. But if you stop and look and just kind of pan around, it's gorgeous. Like, it is. And it just goes to show you that they've worked their tail off even through this pandemic to get us a top tier experience. A lot of folks are getting really angry with the fact that we had a street date, October 27th, and they revoked it. The whole thing is, you can't get mad about that, because in the first time in 16 years of this game being out, it's the very first time they've ever street dated something and said, you know what? You're right, guys. We're listening to you. Said this, and this on the beta. We're going to take your advice. We're going to pull it back. All of our art team and our designers and our programmers, due to said pandemic, are working from home. So you're going from an office with how many employees working day to day. I got to talk to Johnson about this, I have to talk to Johnson about this texture file in this quadrant of this zone. 2 steps down the hallway. Yo, Johnson, this text file, this, you know what I mean? Now it's like, okay, I'm going to send an email. Hopefully he's not doing something. He's going to get back to me. How are we going to go about this? And you have to imagine they're sending files of gigantic proportions. So I don't care what kind of internet you have. It's going to take a while to send those files and make them work cohesively. Because what happens if you send a file over to fix a thing and there's a coding issue and the guy's not right next to you anymore? Now it's all, yeah, we have cell phones, but you know what you do to not answer a cell phone? Click. Oh, sorry, I was with my kids. You know, so being in that setting, it's up, and you know, it's just weird to see. It's weird to see where you know, the fact that they're bringing it back. I know that they said it's going to be out before the end of the year. I personally think, because it was street data, they're a lot further than I thought they were, even though they've taken a step back. I think it's going to be probably maybe a month delayed. I can't see them doing it all the way to Christmas. I just can't. But at the same token, we thought Burning Crusade was going to come out in November, and it came out the following February. So that being said, when in true Blizzard nature, it won't be released until it's ready. But giving us the pre-patch when they told us they would is a sign of good faith. So I don't think it would be that bad. So getting back to the covenants and the soul binds and the conduits and all that fun stuff, once you've been invested, you know, once you're invested in your specific covenant, you have this opportunity to kind of pull off of the powers of the guys that kind of run said covenant, to kind of draw on their power, if you will. Each covenant has, I think, 3 members. I think it's 3 members or creatures that you can form a soul bind with. 2 of you are bound by the soul. It's exactly how it sounds. When you first join a covenant, you'll have access to, I think, 2 of the characters. And you have this whole chance to unlock a 3rd through this epic covenant quest, right? It doesn't make them your bodyguard, like kind of like the followers in Warlord were. You know what I mean? How they're not, it's not like that. It's more like having perks that are available through like an artifact type of system. You don't need anything. It's something you need to carry around, and it's not tied to one particular spec. Kind of like how the weapons were in Legion. It doesn't matter what your spec is. You don't have to go chase down a whole new thing. It just kind of works with you the entire time to kind of share the power that you build with whatever covenant that you're aligned with. They kind of augment your own abilities, which is really cool and different. There's also this new type of item kind of used with the soul binds that's a conduit, right? Conduits kind of allow you to tinker with some of the core powers of that soul bind and allow different choices along the way. So it kind of gives you a variable, because don't forget, in the end of it, the whole story, the whole lore behind this is you're supposed to be working on your soul, right? So you have to have options. How else are you going to come to a conclusion if you're supposed to be in the maw or not, right? After you kind of alter your thing to suit your needs and playstyle, you can switch soul binds. It's kind of similar to switching your talent tree, right? It might be helpful to explore certain soul bind opportunities or whatever options present themselves to you kind of as along the way. Originally, I think it was announced conduits were they're supposed to be destroyed when you replace them. I think that was the initial intent, but that's one of those player feedback things where it kind of convinced them to come up with a different system. Because people are like, well, why are you going to destroy a thing? Well, like, how am I going to want to work further when I worked so hard with one, realized it wasn't for me, and then it's just going to be destroyed? And then if I end up choosing to go back to it, it's going to be starting from square one. Like, no one wants to do it multiple times on the same tune. That's what alts are for. So it'll also help, you know, building these soul binds. It'll also help you with said rewards, like the mounts and the other benefits from the covenant, which is really cool, because that also moves in with the weapons and armor category. Like, there are covenant specific armor sets. I think you unlock the you unlock the back piece last, because this is really cool. Since they've reintroduced, I don't know how many people have recruiter friends out there. Recruiter friend now has this jungle explorer-ish as feel to it. So after a year, you unlock this entire ensemble. Back piece of that isn't a cloak. It is a backpack. Like, it's a straight up traveler, I am stuck in the Sahara backpack, which is super rad, which means they're changing up the entire aspect of how you see your character. Kind of like the heirloom armors. Like the high mountain Taurens have 2 totems. The regular Tauren have 1 gigantic totem. The other ones mostly have cloaks, but they're coming up with it. You know, they're doing it by how trial and error. So when it comes to choosing your covenant, right? A lot of factors can come into it. How the class abilities work with your class, aesthetics, if you're sensible to like the role play aspects, you know. A lot of people will tell you what's best for your class, but the thing of it is, you know, I really hope the elitist mentality doesn't come out like those Mythic Plus groups or those rating people who say, oh, well, if you're this, you should be this because of this decision based on, you know, you need to do what fits best for your playstyle, because ultimately, as long as this game's been out, we play the best when we're the most comfortable with our setups. It's a tried and true, fail-proof way of proving that this is the best for my character because this is how I play. Which I think is going to make a lot of players that kind of lacked a little bit of confidence in themselves to be better. The cool thing about the Covenants is Alliance and Horde are neither good or evil. Whereas in the righteous Kyrian can also be inflexible. Or when the Venthyr punish, it can be seen as necessary redemption for a soul that might have otherwise been condemned. So an undead warrior who kind of protected all of her things with honor might be a perfect candidate for the Kyrian, while a dwarf paladin who committed these atrocities in his almost like this in a zealot way for his personal idea of righteousness that isn't the true paladin path might find himself in Revendreth to atone for having too much pride. Players who are avid will have a great deal of fun, I think, deciding the ultimate fates of your character. I've gotten a lot of BS for, you know, being so into, like, I play on an RP server, yes, but I don't actually partake in RP. Much respect to those who do, right? I just don't have the time for it. That being said, in the same vein, because I love to read, I love to write. Like, what got me into WoW the most, aside from playing since forever, was the books. It was the lore. It was the deep story. It was the relationships that you see. And I'm not talking romantic relationships. I'm talking about like just the friendships and the coming together to, you know, finish out a certain task. That's what reeled me in. So the fact that we are now at end of life for said character, you get to choose how they end. You get to choose their send off, which is, I don't know, I think it's kind of cool. It's kind of full circle. But knowing now that they just brought us back to 50 and 60, that opened the door for the rebirth side of things, like the Night Fate believe in. Does that open us up for more being told, like, are we going to come out of Shadowlands and be 200 years beyond where we were before we went into the Shadowlands? Is time slower in Shadowlands? And if that's the case, this is going to blow open the creative doors for where they can bring the next storyline. I don't know. It's fascinating to see where it's all going to go from here. when you, one thing I remember seeing was when you complete your campaign, your zone campaign on your first character, get them to 60, receive a quest in, was it Orbis? I think it's called Orbis. And you choose your purpose. It was a detective speak to the 4 leaders. That's where you choose. You go to the Shadowlands Covenant map where Talanara is, and you click. It'll give you a chance to pick one of the 4. After this, the leader of said covenant you choose will have a quest for you. Naturally, you can't miss these quests because we're so used to seeing the exclamation point. Look for the yellow exclamation point. No, now this exclamation point has a wood shield back, and it sticks on the screen wherever you're gonna go, so you can't miss it. It is possible to change, like I said, but if you join another covenant, it's not gonna be tough, as long as the new covenant is one that you've never been with before. It kind of becomes more difficult when you rejoin, because to leave the current covenant, you have to go to Orbis and consult with the leader of the one that you want to join, and you'll lose access to all the previous perks, including soulbinds, including transmogs, including the abilities. To leave your current covenant and join the one you had belonged to previously, it's not an easy task, because they kind of they take on a feeling, you know, at least they present as though they have feeling, being AI. They take on this feeling that they've been wronged, right? You betrayed them, so you already had to bust your ass the first time to prove that you're something. Now you gotta prove that you're worth something, and you're not a Benedict Arnold. So you were the second time proving your dedication. Is you have to do 2 separate quests. There's 2 weekly quests, but they're a week apart. So to rejoin a faction you already left, it's going to take you a minimum of 2 weeks if you do it, if you can even complete the quests. You don't officially leave your previous covenant until you complete all the steps to switch. So I don't know. It's pretty good, because you'll previously join. The covenant you previously joined starts out with the same process as above. However, instead of getting quest to go into your new sanctum, you instead get a quest to go complete tasks. I don't know. It kind of it requires the complete stiff quest line, complete with the percentage bar of combined activities, and including rares and rare elites and world quest treasures, dailies, all the stuff that we're used to. There's 8 world quests that are also required. The pet world quests do not seem in that vein, thank God. As much as a pet farmer as I am awful at World of Warcraft Pokemon. I love it. I think it's really cool, but am I good at it? I know my limits. So we touched on a little bit about building your reputation. What's cool, I think is really cool, is we're finally bringing back the dungeon grind for rep. I think that's a really good idea. We're getting, what is it, Spires of Ascension, and there was the Necrotic Wake, I think, for the Kyrian. We're getting the Theater of Pain and Plaguefall for the Necrolords. We're getting the Mists, was it Turnasith or something like that, and the other side for the Night Fae, and then of course the Venthyr get my favorites, the Sanguine Depths and the Halls of Atonement. I don't know. I'm excited, to say the least, because you don't have to pick every single time. You can pick your covenant, and then all of your alts are essentially aligned with it off the rip. So that's really cool. If you got the quest or the achievement, was a Lore Master for Shadowlands, by completing the zone campaigns, any subsequent alt, and that means any of them, that you bring through will be able to choose a covenant much sooner and get working straight away on their covenant specific activities. Once you choose to replay the storyline of your main character, or you jump right to the dailies. The thing with that is, if you jump right to doing dailies and world quests and this and that, you will have no access to the Maw. And they haven't said it yet, but I have a very strong feeling that the Maw is eventually going to evolve kind of like Argus did, where it's the focal point of doing the higher end, the higher tier PvP and dailies. So it'll be very interesting to see how the people who chose on their alts to not do the storyline and not having access to them all kind of feel. Right, exactly. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to try to do Lore Master straight out the rip, because I'm not planning on just sitting there and doing all my alts. I am taking my warrior. I am grinding to the wall until I get everything done. Because personally, I'm going to experience all four, probably. I'm going to experience all four of the covenants because I want to see it. My warrior, Venthyr. Druid has to be Night Fae. And I know I previously said, don't feel whatever. Because the Night Fae doesn't feel like anything else except for druids. Maybe monks, but it's a little too pretty. It's kind of it's like the Night Elf starting zone with bioluminescence falling out of everything. Bastion will probably be my paladin, or Kyrian. Sorry, Kyrian will probably be my paladin, and I'll probably use my necromancer. I'll probably use my warlock with necrolords. I can see some being very I don't know. I can see some being very specific to what would fit with said race or said class, but not necessarily concrete. I think it'd be funny as hell seeing a warlock as a Kyrian, because they use the dark magic to control demons. Maybe they're using that power they've gained to control demons to take down enemies that oppose those who uphold righteousness. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's going to be interesting to see what combinations people come up with. So I'll probably be replaying the storyline just because I want to immerse myself so much into the zones, and that's my favorite part, is seeing all the little things. If I wasn't that guy, I wouldn't have found the Ninja Turtle reference so fast in the sewers of Dalaran back in BC. Like, you go to the sewers of Dalaran where the PvP area was, where people would always drop their dual flags, and off to the right by the one pipe down the middle, you see one rat and 4 baby turtles just chilling in a little green puddle. So subtle, so small, right there. Yeah, oh, sorry, that was Lich King. Yeah, BC. No, BC, I was thinking of He-Man at the bottom of Shatrath with Battle Cat by the blacksmith vendors. But the Covenants thing being a big deal, it's going to be interesting going forward. This kind of segues into the next topic I want to talk about, in what's going to be expected for new players coming. Covenant thing, I hope Blizzard keeps the integrity of everything that's going on, as far as giving us so much to do, giving us so many options right off the rip with this expansion. I hope they bring it forward, because they have a huge track record of finding the system people like for the 2-year expansion, and then instead of bringing it forward, dropping it back. I love that this time, with the abilities and everything else, is Covenant specific, and the talent system is Covenant specific, instead of having an item that you have to unlock powers through. I absolutely, and I'm gonna go on the record saying it, I've told all my bestest best friends, absolutely hated the art of the Legion artifacts. Hated it. Simply for the fact you're giving major lore items to one character when there's only supposed to be one in existence. Paladins is a perfect example. Paladins were given the Ashbringer, which is the holy sword of swords. It's an artifact. It's just that. There's one, and it did all these unstoppable, amazing things. Explain to me how that's relevant when I'm in the middle of Orgrimmar and I pass 25 other Ashbringers. It kind of devalues the entire mystery and marvel around said item. They moved that to the Heart of Azeroth, which was the necklace, right? Super cool. Good idea. But again, I don't want an item that levels with me to dictate how I'm going to be viewed in the looking for group chat, or in an application for a group. I don't want them to see, oh well, your Heart of Azeroth is only level 47. Ours is all at 65. Are you going to carry your weight? Like when you see players that have half the Azrai power but twice the skill, and they leave you in the dust. I want it to go back to being on merit, and I want it to go back to being on credit of how you play your character. And I think those cross abilities, aligning classes with a Covenant ability that you wouldn't necessarily see that class do, is something that's going to be really, really interesting. That being said, let's take 5. Because that pretty much covers everything we know about the Covenants at this moment. But we're going to take a few minutes, because I want to talk to you guys about something, and I want to see how everyone feels about, in theory, erasing 15 years of history. Be right back. And we're back. So when I say I want to know how people feel about removing essentially 15 years of game, is okay. So those of us who've played since whenever we started playing to now, we got to experience major issues. We got to see the transition from Thrall stepping down as war chief and giving it to Garrosh, watching Garrosh flip his brain, end up becoming a prisoner due to the war crimes he committed, watching Vol'jin come and go, watching the super fast, and I mean lightning fast, leadership by Bane Bloodhoof, and then watching him perish. You know, major things. Watching Illidan at the top of the Black Temple with his awesome speech. Because the max level is now getting shot down to 50. Instead of extending that marathon further for new players of Shadowlands, we squished it, right? So brand new players that start with a level 1 character will no longer go to their... They don't, like we right now, if we were to make a level 1, we have a choice of either doing the new starting zone, which is called Exile's Breach, or doing our old one. Like if you're undead, you go to Death Knell. If you're an orc, you can go to Valley of Trials. Then brand new tunes go to Exile's Reach. Done. From 1 to 10. They then jump right to the current expansion run right now. They go right to Battle for Azeroth to go from 10 to 50. So Shadowlands then finishes your job from going from 50 to 60. Same number of levels WoW originally had 16 years ago. This means the pre-patch leading up to the expansion will kind of bring us down to a lower level than the classic players currently are. Think about that for a second. Classic goes to 60. You can't currently access 60. It's just mind-blowing when you think about it. But it has its advantages. Blizzard estimates it should take about 30% less time, to get to max level than it currently does in BFA. And that was before yesterday's patch. That was with full heirlooms, that was with their buff of 100% bonus XP, and the 10% Darkmoon Fair bonus if you had it, right? Since BFA is the most recent expansion, new players will default graduate from charming Exile's Reach into more modern content with better graphics. And that's what I think they're pushing, is they can't go through every zone and retexture everything in the new engine. A, it's too time consuming, and B, we might as well go buy a terabyte hard drive solely for WoW. It's just not going to happen. It's not likely that they can modernize it, but if we skip content from vanilla WoW and the 6 expansions before BFA, it doesn't mean they don't have to attempt it. It kind of gives it a short shift to the new graphics. It undoes a lot of huge things, and I think a lot of people are holding on to that because they were there for most of it. I brought the Illidan thing up, like when he does the whole storyline, and there's that cinematic, and he jumps in front of the moon, wings expanded, holding the warglaives, and he's like, it's that famous "you are not prepared" line. That sent chills through people, and we talked about it for years. It was just so cool hearing about it and then seeing it. You know, you read about it, then you see it. Or if we're at the Battle of Angerthar during the Wrathgate ordeal, and there's the one undead character that's taken the revenge, and he comes up over the citadel or on the side wall and says, "Did you think we had forgotten? Did you think we had forgiven? Death to the scourge and death to the living." Like, those are monumentous occasions of such a build-up and of such a thing that we've all cared so much for, that people aren't going to experience. My personal favorite is everyone's going to see Sylvanas as a one-dimensional villain who plays like the big bad in Shadowlands, and I am so excited about that because I don't care. I hate her. I thought she should have been gutted in vanilla, but we'll take that to a different episode. They don't, but with Sylvanas, they won't, like, she really is a complicated, conflicted leader who she's very bitterly and reminiscent of lost times with her sisters. If they got to know, that is if the new characters got to get to know her at all. Once you arrive to a capital city as a new player from the 1 to 10 adventure, you're brand new. So you won't know who the leaders are that you're talking to. You won't know their relevance. You won't know their significance. You won't know that when you're sent to Kultiris or Zandalar immediately, that you're encountering characters that you've never met who tell you they're glad to see you again. So it's a little clunky that way, because you're hailed as this massively conquering hero in almost every interaction, but it doesn't really seem deserved for killing a few zombies and ogres in a starting zone. You know what I mean? You hardly know any of WoW's enduring storylines, or you're unable to interpret experienced players' repertoire of the inside jokes and memes. You're a stranger in a strange land. Like, you kind of get short-sticked the entire experience. That being said, how do you fit 16 years of storyline and gameplay in 50 levels? Not only when it's a 30% faster experience, but without slowing it down to a classic WoW timeline of leveling. We're seemingly getting away from the takes 4 months to get to max level mentality. I used to feel indifferent about it. I used to think I want them to slow it down. I want them to take their time and make me really earn every single level. But in 17 years of playing this game, things have changed. I work, I have built, have bills to pay, I have kid, I don't have time to sit in my room for 14 hours a day playing a game in a bubble of Mountain Dew cans and Cheeto bags. I just don't have that time anymore. It's a risky move for what they're doing. It's risky as far as they're basically going to be the first MMO that's re-emerging its succession, because a lot of the things that made them so popular and made the game so revered is going to be accessible for new players. And it's simpler to play, yes, and it's being that it's raked in so much money to monthly subscribers. Think about it. If you think about Lich King, it was a titan of a game. It had 12 million players worldwide. Back then, that was back when Blizzard actually told us the numbers. But they kind of maintained its tight grip, but at one point they were nearing monopoly status by the Western MMO market. And by using it to grow bigger and offer more and frequently better stories than its competitors. That's the solid thing about WoW, is it's not just the gameplay. A lot of people say, oh, it's a cartoony looking game, but they don't understand the depth. And that's what pulled a lot of us in. It's what's kept a lot of us in, is you kind of grow to build a fondness for certain characters. You learn to build a disdain for other characters. The new level experience in Shadowlands takes you from 1 to 50, but it takes a fast world and thousands of stories, big, little, whatever. Those gigantic heroes. goes, here it is, right? Here's the story, right? This whole thing. This is what you get. But you're a badass. It takes, I don't know, I think losing the story takes one very valuable piece of WoW's success in the MMO marketplace and condenses it. That being said, though, a lot of people are curious if it's going to attract new players to the franchise, and I absolutely think so, because leveling for a player now is a lot more convoluted than it used to be. The kids, the people playing today don't necessarily want that type of long-term play. They don't want, we live in a very instant gratification world. And the younger you are playing this game, the more of that mindset you have. So they kind of have to evolve with the times in order to stay a contender, Exile's Reach is a breath of fresh air. It's a little bit, I'll probably only do it once. Let's put it that way. I'll probably only do it one time because it's very tutorial at first, and I don't need a game to tell me how to move my character, how to use hotkeys, how to use certain moves at certain situations every time I make a tune. But it's also cool to see that your starting zone will take you 1 to 10, and then you move on. So it'll be weird to see where it goes. Thing about it too that WoW has an advantage of to other games is they have a 16-year-old code. It behaves better. Like the newer games, they're gonna act better because they have that newer code. Yeah, true. So even though a game's gonna look better or move better, it doesn't necessarily have, had before yesterday was depth. You have to invest in the previous stories, which kind of bolsters the sweet rewards of meeting known characters again in the afterlife depicted in Shadowlands. Blizzard risks, I think, failing to engage for those new players for the long haul. The company is definitely pressing a reset button on WoW with this. I would almost consider this WoW 2 from a personal standpoint. But it might be necessary after so many years and so many expansions. But it also removes one potential answer to a question that's only getting more urgent as WoW ages, being why, if you were to start an MMO from square one today, why would you pick World of Warcraft? It's a tall order. That's a big question. My personal answer is this, and it's probably biased because I played this game for so long. But the fact we're taking it back to 50, the fact that we're going to level 60, tells me that they're going to start writing hungrily again. They want to introduce new characters. They want to introduce new big characters of proper heritage and proper backstory that we might not have necessarily paid attention to. A good friend of mine and I have always spoken highly of good old Bane Bloodhoof. After Karen Bloodhoof was killed, Bane has an incredible potential story. We just kind of brushed under the carpet. Is that something going forward will be written to greatness? Is that something that we're going to see when those monumental speeches come from eventually? Incoming expansions. We already went to 120 once. So what's stopping? Now think about this. Here's my theory here. Think about this for 1 second. Shadowlands is the death of the character. You're moving through the covenants, moving through the storyline to make your soul better. Though you're half in, half out, eventual goal is rebirth. Yes? 60 was where vanilla stopped. Why can't they just give us 7 more expansions, bringing us back to 120? All new story, all new content to capture us all over again. Regardless, it'll be interesting to see where it goes. Whenever they decide to bring it out, I'm going to be right where you see me. Waiting, happy, hopefully healthy, and excited. Next week, I'm going to go back to the things that no one talks about. We're going to talk about the lore of the little guys. We're going to talk about races that we see and interact with all the time, whether we're working with them, whether we're working for them, whether we're working against them, whether we're saving or slaughtering. These races have huge backstories, at least considerable enough that I, in my own mind, think, hey, let's make a show about it. So next week, we're going to cover the Gnolls, our favorite little hyena-inspired friends. Hopefully at the same time. If you guys want to keep track to see when I'm going live, when I'm going to be here, you can follow me on the Barrens Chat Podcast Twitch page. I also have these, where is it? Follow me, let's see. I can put this little guy right here. Nope, that wasn't it. At the end screen, you'll see the names and handles for Twitter, for Instagram. I will be posting regularly on the Twitter, especially about what's to come, what we'll be talking about. And yeah, I hope I appreciate everyone that stopped by, hung out, everything. And I will see you all next week.